Welcome to Strata Green webinar. My name is Lara Potter. I'm the marketing manager of Strata Green. So webinar topic today is why Tree Coach was developed. So we will discuss the origin and the motivations behind the creation of Tree Coach. Very, very exciting. Discovering the driving forces. I think that's very important when it comes to a brand. What is it that drives this brand to actually existing and be out there? The inspirations, vision that led to the development of this innovative tree coaching system. And today I will be introducing our guest speaker this morning. We have Tim Buruma, commercial landscaping expert and business owner and co-founder of Tree Coach. Good morning, Tim. How are you?
Morning, Lara. I'm very well this morning, thank you, or this afternoon, wherever you're joining us from. Thank you.
Would you like to share a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. So, as Lara's just said, they're co-founder of Tree Coach, along with my brother, and director of commercial landscape operations here in Victoria. And I joined my father's business back in late 1989, to be honest, alongside my brothers in the commercial landscape field. So second generation landscape construction in the commercial sector. And we found ourselves developing our business through the 90s and into the early 2000s and becoming a market leader very quickly in what we were doing in that space. And I guess in terms of heading to where Tree Coach came from and how that was developed through the population boom and the growth corridors particularly in Victoria's north and southeast districts and even the west, councils were growing at such a rapid rate. And tree planting was rolling out with no real oversight or care or condition for what was being put into their municipalities. And so very quickly, councils realised, hey, we've got some problems here. We need to be paying attention to what tree stock is being supplied to our projects, the condition of those trees, how they're being grown. And there was a lot of development occurring at that time, sort of 2005 onwards, in the nursery industry relating to tree propagation, potting on processes in the nursery field, and how that was dictating results for tree establishment in their new established environments. As a contractor installing those trees and having to maintain them, we were also learning very rapidly over 2 and 3 year periods that our best work wasn't great. And, you know, there was a reasonably high failure rate, and whether or not that was conditional upon the nursery stock that we were selecting to put into our projects, the actual species selection, whether or not it was suitable for those soil types and conditions, and then obviously the installation process and the aftercare were 3 really critical I suppose, critical keys for success. And so along that journey, we were identifying very quickly where things were going wrong. There was a nursery industry that was progressing rapidly in terms of pot technology and care for what was being supplied to projects. And from there, we realised there's also installation issues as well. And so, you know, when you build something and you go back, you know what you've built, you've seen what you've built, you know, you can go back in 5 years' time and the playground's still the playground, the public furniture's still the public furniture, the picnic shelter's still the same picnic shelter, but the garden beds and the trees have continued to evolve and grow and establish. And it's at that point that you really start to see, you know, this really is successful, or this is a failure. And so on that journey, we were saying to ourselves, well, that project was great for all of these reasons, but we had some failure here. And so we were identifying that, you know, the installation process was a real fail in terms of what was occurring. So, you know, lots of education had to take place around the depth that trees were being planted at to make sure root balls were were at the correct level, to make sure that consolidation over existing services that may have been put in the ground before us had taken place, that excavations for the tree hole themselves weren't over excavated and causing subsidence in years to come. And then, of course, staking. Trees need to move, you know. They're intended to grow from seedling, unrestrained, in an ideal fashion. That's great if we could achieve that. But taking nursery stock that's been typically grown on trellis wires or grown in locations that are sheltered from wind, and then taking those semi-advanced trees into the marketplace, we realised, well, we need to mimic what nature wants us to mimic.
I actually have a poll that I would love to launch in the beginning. I would love to know how familiar are you with Tree Coach? So I can see there are enough people now to take the poll. So I'm going to launch that poll before we start hearing from Tim again. 50% say familiar but never use the products, as well as not familiar at all, here to learn more. All right, I will actually just leave the poll in the background for those who are coming in late. And I would love to also introduce Callum McIntyre, a gentleman next to Tim right now. So Callum is Tree Coach Head of Sales, Australia, New Zealand. I will hand it over back to Tim to continue with the story on why Tree Coach was developed.
Yeah, thanks, Lara. Yeah, as I was saying, so we, really seen as a result of our own work, our own failures, and a need in the market where our activity of tree planting, and we plant a lot of trees. We were planting thousands of trees, and so we identified that we can be better. We need to come alongside the nursery industry, embrace their change in growing techniques and pot technology, and try and outwork an outcome of where we saw real failure, which was continually seeing trees planted at the wrong depth. So we knew that we wanted to somehow address this, not just with our own team of 40 staff that we had undertaken that activity, but through our industry. We wanted to make change. We also knew that from tremendous studies that have been done through the United States and other places around the world of trees in wind tunnels and different growing conditions, that trees need flexibility of movement to really establish their root plate and to establish their caliper and trunk taper. So, on that process, we thought, well, yeah, we can loosen our ties from our rigid hardwood stakes, and we can try and mimic what nature intended in the field by having a better activities and better processes around how we were tying trees. But really, at the end of the day, we wanted the stakes to be able to move with our tree, to be able to flex and move in the wind, and then come back to that recovery position. So that was, we had a few key ideas in our head as to what we knew nature wanted us to outwork, and then also a sustainable approach. We knew that using hardwood stakes were difficult to recycle. They were difficult to remove from the ground, and for our staff, from an occupational health and safety point of view, they were mechanically ramming timber stakes with a 15-kilogram mechanical rammer at ear height and eye height, and sometimes 300 stakes a day was their general activity, and obviously those roles were shared across various team members, but 15 kilograms at head height and a noisy activity was just something else. We thought, there's got to be a better way. We have to come up with better systems. And so, we pondered it for many, many years, to be honest, and also pondered our frustrations, developing our techniques for the old planting methods and trying to improve those. But really, we had to innovate. And Tree Coach came around as a discussion one day of what if we can plant with the tree a removable system, because you've always got to dig the hole right to plant the tree. So that activity was never going to change. So we felt, what if we can plant something with the tree whereby we could remove that occupational hazard of ramming timber stakes, where we would have a stake that then could be easily removed and reused. And from a sustainable approach, how could we get this made from recycled materials? And so there was several fundamentals there that we had to tick, and a lot of prototypes along the journey. The system had to be easily removable as well, and hence that lower cardboard ring, which Tree Coach has, and that the idea of that is once it's wet, or in a few weeks' time, it's rotted out or it's decayed to a period where it can just be easily removed and breaks away from the unit, so it makes it nice and removable. There is a little bit of a thought in the marketplace that we're leaving plastics in the ground and that we're planting something with the tree that stays there forever, but that's not the case. It is a big misconception with Tree Coach, unfortunately, but our lower cardboard base allows that unit to be very easily removed just with a pair of pliers. That watering bowl comes out of the ground. So our watering bowl was another development that we wanted to ensure that we were directing our water to the root plate. The water wasn't just running off the surface or after the first 2 or 3 waterings into a traditional soil watering bowl that were eroding and the mulch was covering it, that contractors could be confident knowing that they'd put 20, 30 litres of water onto that tree, and that water had, for the best part, gone through the root plate of that tree to help that development stage. So many iterations and much playing around with plastics and plastics types and how we were producing the unit is where we got to, and trying to get that stake to a point where it was rigid enough to retain the tree and support the tree, yet flexible enough to move with the tree in those really windy events. And surprisingly, what really shocked us with our results was more so not just seeing the caliper development and watching that tree move in the wind, but it was really great to see in exposed locations how fewer trees were snapping. Lots of trees snap at where they're tied at that tie point against rigid hardwood stakes. They'll often, in a really, really strong wind, they'll break and snap at that tie location point. But with Tree Coach, we were seeing a really sympathetic approach to the stake being able to move with the tree in those really, really strong wind events, which was fantastic. So really exciting. There's also been a few studies, Lara, just on even vibration on a tree. When the tree can vibrate, it's enough communication for the trunk to develop, to communicate with the root plate, and also for the tree to identify where its prevailing wind is coming from and what its root plate needs to do to establish, not just in its new environment, but to establish long-term where it's going to receive most of its punishment from in terms of the wind.
I love it that you actually touch a little bit about the misconception, because I've heard people talking about it too. Yeah. My day-to-day, I'm not really like out there, doing the trial or the install. However, I still hear people talking, and I love it that you touch on that and actually clarify. And I think we have a little bit of an update on our poll with the new people coming in. Now we have 17% saying very familiar because they have used Tree Coach. And then 33% saying familiar but never used the products. And those who are here to learn more and not familiar at all, we have 50%. This is fantastic. So Daniel asks, why do we prioritize tree planting over tree establishment so often?
That's quite a conceptual question. That's an excellent question. Yeah. It's quite conceptual, isn't it? The way I think about it in my head, and without trying to potentially step on toes, I'm going to be, I suppose, quite direct. And I think it's mainly because tree planting is something that can be quantified and easily shown to say that here I've done something.
Yeah.
Where if you're actually going to measure your outcomes, just like Tim spoke about before in their journey, they would go back to their sites and actually assess their outcomes and think, are we achieving what we actually set out to achieve? So if you do that, you would then be faced with your failures.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, you know, for want of continuous improvement, you will need to address those. But I just think, you know, in general, so it's not pointing the finger at anybody in particular, but I think there's just a general malaise around addressing failures rather than, focusing on the holistic outcome and what you're actually trying to achieve.
Yeah, and it is a good question in that it's something we've identified as well. It seems to just be a target. We've got, you know, 5,000 trees that we're going to plant this year. No one likes to talk about their failures, and we're actually trying to say to councils and LAs and clients and parks managers, let's talk about doing less better. You know, plant numbers, if there's not team to do proper maintenance. And that was, sorry, just one thing that we noticed when we were handing over our projects to councils. You know, obviously sometimes they're short on team and they weren't getting an opportunity to get around and remove ties off trees and remove tree stakes or lessen those ties. And so often we were seeing a tree establish really well, but then it was just so bound and unable to move. And part of Tree Coach's development was to give something that as that tree developed, that there was some grace as well. So if people were strained for time to get back in 6 months or 12 months and release ties and do tie maintenance, that the stake would actually just move more as the tree got bigger. And so providing a real grace to the tree in the event that clients were just strained of time and activity. And it's, you know, it's something everyone struggles with, is having the time and having resource. And we've come to know that really well of councils. It's a big struggle and there's a big workload. And so, yeah, our attitude is do less if possible, but do it well. And we really hope that Tree Coach speaks into that space of excellence.
Just a little sharing. So I was overseas. I was in New Zealand for a project just last month, and I had an amazing moment of like walking into a project and I saw Tree Coach in there. I remember taking a photo and sent to Callum. I'm like,
yeah,
but the Tree Coach. And it was just fantastic. It's almost like you can tell that councils, even globally, not just in Australia and New Zealand, and as well as everywhere else, started to get to know more about Tree Coach and learning about the product. And I believe that could most probably be the #1 challenge, because change is not something that we are wired to do or wanting to adapt. Educate people and help them in their journey to unlearn and relearn this new way.
You know, what we do find is that there's interesting. There's quite a high knowledge bed. Tim mentioned about some of the great studies that have been done across the US, Australia. I mean, we've got Burnley Horticulture here in Melbourne, which you know, part of the University of Melbourne. They're renowned for their deep studies on trees, on soil, everything like that. So, you know, there are a lot of people who have done a lot of things, and I think a lot of that knowledge is actually quite well shared across the industry. But where there are gaps between sort of knowledge and actual practice is things, say, like it could be a product application, it could be a particular practice, okay, that either hasn't been enacted well enough, or the product hasn't come out yet, or wherever the gap is. And that's exactly what, you know, said, you know, we're trying to fill with Tree Coach, is that there's this knowledge base, and just about anyone who has a hort degree or an arb degree or anything like that, or is just interested in nature and how it grows, knows things like the tree has to move to be able to establish correctly.
Yeah.
That is knowledge that just about everyone knows. And when we finally can actually get on site with people and put some trees in the ground and they see Tree Coach in action, so as soon as it's installed, tree ties are on, as soon as there's some wind, they can start to see that trunk move, and straight away they get it.
Yeah,
they understand why, you know, Tree Coach was designed the way it was, and then they then start to understand the benefits they can get from, you know, having that in their planting program, the consistency that it's going to deliver, the quality control that they get, and then ultimately, like we mentioned before, the outcomes that we're all trying to achieve.
yeah, like when you be planting tree, I would assume everyone who plant tree, regardless in a small scale or a large scale, our goal is always for that tree to stay growing strong throughout generations. Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah.
I have children myself, so I always see the next generation point of view on why I do what I do. As people, we do that, and as well as tree planters and decision makers in the business in council as well. I believe that's the goal that we have in mind. Similarities between us.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And that, again, that speaks to why, Tim and his brother Rob wanted to develop Tree Coach from an existing sort of waste product. How can we make it out of the waste we're already producing? So Tree Coach is fully circular in every sense of that word.
Yep.
It's hasn't been, I'll say, greenwashed, which is sort of quite common in the sustainability space. So the product is made from 100% recycled curbside waste, and every component is fully recyclable again. And it doesn't need any special handling should you go to put it back into those streams. Your standard recycling streams can handle it, and it goes back into producing products again like Tree Coach or other products that are made from recovered curbside waste.
Yep.
So it is a fully circular product. It diverts waste away from landfill, which is excellent. I will say, if you don't mind, I'll just add something else in that I think.
Go for it.
Yeah. You mentioned New Zealand. So, we did a national launch of Tree Coach in February 2021, which was a hard time to launch anything.
Silly time to launch anything.
Yes. And since then, we are in over 90 councils across Australia. So that's over 90 councils that are either buying or have an active trial of Tree Coach. And we also expanded into New Zealand just in a trial phase in 2022. And already by the next planting season, we had a few of the major councils actually hold up their planting plans to plant with Tree Coach when we could finally get some across there in 2023. So New Zealand's, we get a massive vote of confidence from New Zealand. They understand the benefits, and they're very open to it at the moment, which is great.
Yeah.
So I'll also share some other data, I suppose, as well. I mean, there are some people who like the stories, which is great. There are also some people who like a bit of some numbers and some data. So for the data number heads, I'll also share some interesting facts, something that I actually found out very recently, yesterday actually. So this is regarding the City of Melbourne, the municipality of the City of Melbourne. So I'll just, if you don't mind, I'll just read off my notes here so I can make sure I get it right. So since 2012, they have planted over 47,000 trees. And just recently, a prominent figure in their urban forestry program boasted that 78% of those trees were successful. But what's, the glaringly obvious part for us is that that's 22% that have failed. And that's a high number. Or out of the 47,000, that's 10,340 trees haven't made it. Now, I know City of Melbourne because I talk to them often. They estimate their tree replacement cost. So that tree replacement cost is removal of the failed tree, replanting of a new one, and 2 years maintenance. So that's their tree replacement cost. They estimate that to be around $2,000. Okay, so per tree. So 10,340 trees at $2,000 per tree is $20.68 million that has just been essentially, wasted. So these are the kind of, numbers we're looking to reduce and reduce significantly. So across all our Tree Coach trials where we know the contractor has maintained the trees properly and that council and or us, if we're around, are dedicated to proper review of the installations, we've seen Tree Coach tree establishment failure rates of 2% or less. And that is common across the board. Here, like I said, with the City of Melbourne, it's 22%. So we're really looking to pull a lot of wasted cost out and to really direct the spend in the smartest way possible to Tim did mention that it's better to do less and do it right than to, like the question before, essentially plant more but not focus on establishment.
Yeah.
So, and I know, look, Strata Green, you're in obviously WA. A lot of the attendees might be from WA. We might have some from across Australia. So what I'm about to talk about now is mainly WA focused. But for Perth as a city, the tree canopy in Perth is 16%, and that's the lowest out of every Australian capital.
Yeah.
Now the WA state government has obviously recognised the need for urban greening, and actually have a funding program in place. I believe it's called the Urban Greening Grant Program, which is great. It's great that it's recognised not just at your local government level, but that it's also recognised at a state level, because you get buy-in all the way up the chain. So there's impetus to make change and to plant more trees, which everyone benefits from. The one thing though, with more funding and with more attention from the public around what urban greening actually means, that typically might have just been a council only sort of term, but that is becoming more and more in the public eye, and people are understanding more and more about council planting programs or the need to just green our suburbs and streets. With that just comes more exposure, and I suppose more scrutiny on top of that. And just like I mentioned with the City of Melbourne and their very high failure rates, what we're trying to do is to partner with councils, contractors, anybody that is involved in tree planting. We're trying to partner with you to essentially reduce your failures and establish your natural assets to their full potential.
Callum, that number actually such an eye opener, and it's confronting, but at the same time as well, when it's confronting, the question is, what are we going to do about it? We can just sweep it under the rug and pretend like we don't know, but the stats is out there. Or are we going to be part of the solution? And I, as part of Strata Green, I know for sure that our team is all about being part of the solution. That's also why we've been working with NGP, with Tree Coach for I think a couple of years now, and we really would love to assist you. If you want to hear more also about Tree Coach, we have a landing page that's available, stratagreen.com.au/Tree Coach. A little intermezzo as well while we're waiting for people to ask more questions. There was one event that Strata Green was attending, and I was asking Dan for NGP, may I please use Tree Coach and put fairy lights around it, because they're so beautiful. But it's just very slick looking. I can imagine a wide open space, a park where community able to spend their time with their families, sitting down, have a picnic, and you have Tree Coach on your left and right, looking very aesthetically pleasing as well. I would say that it is also important for landscape architects, for council, and if that's something that you would like to ask questions on, you are more than welcome to do so. Otherwise, I will let Tim and Callum to share a little bit more before we close today.
It's a good point, Lara, just on the symmetry and the appearance of the product. I mean, from initially, it wasn't part of our goal. Our goal was, tree health, but the symmetry that's come from the product and the appearance of the stakes on the same taper, that they're all uniform. When you're mechanically ramming timber stakes, obviously very hard to achieve that nice appearance, and all the stakes at the same finishing level in terms of height. So the symmetry and the appearance on the landscape was a fluke, if I may throw it in there. The other thing that we sort of came to know from Tree Coach, from installations into nature strips, was we were seeing less of a failure when motor vehicles were backing into them into the nature strip. The stake was simply moving and then just sort of springing back. And obviously, if you want to intend to drive over one, you're going to drive over it and do the same damage as you would with timber stakes. But just those little awkward bumps where people are backing out of a driveway and they've hit the stake. So we were noticing a great success in terms of not having to recover, team having to drive around and straighten stakes and re-ram stakes. And so that was a nice little win as well that became evident once we started to install Tree Coach into particular environments. The other one that we that came about as well was the stake being plastic, having those softened edges and being flexible. Was we ticked the box for playground for use in playground audits in and close to playgrounds. So typically, where trees are planted besides some play assets, they can't be staked, or council are looking for either in-ground staking options. But Tree Coach managed to get a certification from playground auditors for use in playgrounds. So that was pretty cool to get that tick as well. Yeah, and obviously WorkSafe. Along that journey, we've won good design awards. We've done some filming in New York in readiness for further expansion, and WorkSafe here in Victoria. We were a finalist in the WorkSafe Awards, and really recognised for removing that whole repetitive and vibration from using that mechanical rammer, and just in terms of hearing. So big ticks of approval there, which has been really encouraging to get those little accolades along the way, and also recognition from Sustainability Victoria. Just recently as one of 36 finalists chosen. I think it was 380 products were put to Sustainability Victoria, and we were shortlisted to one of 36 for an awards event. So really pleasing to see different spaces outside the typical nursery industry to give us an approval. And I just wanted to speak into some of Callum's numbers there quickly. Whilst they're numbers from a major council here from 2012, the Australian standard that was developed in 2018, we first released in 2018 for trees in the landscape. It was the first time we had an Australian standard for trees, and that criteria around nurseries and growing and suitability for planting into their new environments. We feel it fell short of that ongoing management. And so in time, could there be an Australian standard for actual tree planting installation and aftercare and staking? And that's something that's really on our heart to see really enhance the Australian standard that exists now and has only recently been updated for trees in the amenity. So in their new amenities. So it's great to see the nursery industry making progress. It'd be wonderful to break down some people's numbers of where their failure occurs. What's the number for, if you're a 10% failure rate, of that 10%, what's vandalism, what's contractor planting depth, because Tree Coach is a planting aid as well. We believe it helps contractors plant the tree at the correct depth, because it needs to be for the watering basin to work. So, it's great for councils to say, oh, we have 10%, 5%, whatever their failure rate might be, but to break it down to where the shortcomings are. We'll never hit perfection, but we aim for excellence, and Tree Coach is just there ready to back people up. We do a lot of planting. Actually, New Zealand was fantastic to plant over there with many, many teams, and for feedback to say no one's actually really showing me that that's the process, and to try and make better careers and be a real change and breath of fresh air in our space is what we really want to be. And as much as we're all for trees, we're all for people doing those activities as well. So we really provide that assistance. Callum's been right around Australia, and some of our other team aiding with installations and just teaching how to install better, how to tie, and how to make sure we're getting this process. So come back with your grandchildren and say, hey, I know that tree.
I know. Yeah, you can even name the tree if you want to, right? Because you know it from the beginning. And I can actually confirm on this. Not only we obviously assist for trial, but we also do monthly reporting back to Tree Coach and NGP. For what reason? For that reason. If the trial have some sort of an issue, there's always that follow-up. We have a couple of questions just came through. This one's from Dave. Are there any restrictions in the pot or bag size of the tree used? Can they be used on the 12-liter, 45-liter, and 100-liter trees?
Thanks, Dave. Good question. Yes. So we've got 3 particular sizes of Tree Coach. I mean, I can just tell you, but we can actually get you a tech spec sheet which has it all mapped out for you and some data points regarding that. So please get in touch with Lara after, and she'll be able to send you that. But just to answer it on the spot, we have small Tree Coach, which is good for your sort of 20 centimetre to 18 litre pots. We have large Tree Coach, which is good from anything from bigger than an 18 up to a 45. And we have Max Tree Coach, which is anything bigger than a 45 up to your 100s.
Next question that came in. This is really interesting. I think a lot of people wants to know, when would you remove Tree Coach? So let's say you use it. When do you remove it?
Yeah, again, great question. So the earliest you would remove it is when the tree is self-supporting. That's the whole purpose of the staking supports, is to ensure or help the tree obviously establish in the landscape. And once it is self-supporting, you can then remove the stakes. Tim did mention before, you know, if you're too stretched for time and your program's sort of not extensive enough, then you are, with Tree Coach, you are able to actually leave it in a bit longer because it does no damage to the tree. It doesn't impede growth. It doesn't damage the trunk. Or sort of have any adverse effects. So you can continue to leave it on. You can continue to use the watering basin, you know, to deliver the water and remove the stakes. And hopefully with the stakes, you can use them again for your next planting project.
Yeah.
In terms of hardwood stakes, I mean, I think it's pretty fair to say that the standard is leave them on for 2 years. But that's because typically by then, most trees have, you know, developed some kind of root structure. But what we're seeing across the board, particularly with your fast growing trees, if you know, council or whatever is planting a lot of eucalypts, we're seeing these trees actually be destaked like inside of 9 months or 9 months.
Yeah.
Some of your fast growing trees, like your Corimbi maculatus, etc., 9 months to establishment, which is amazing.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add?
Yeah, no, and of course, it really depends on the growth season, you know, when the tree's planted. But typically, as Callum was saying, there really a growth season, a late spring planting through summer, and you know, end of autumn here in Victoria. We're removing ties, often leave stakes in place, just depending on the environment. If it's, you know, around a school or a hospital or a playground, just for some added protection. But ties really can be off the tree in anywhere from 6 to 9 months, no problems at all. Yeah, which is amazing. Thanks for having us. I'd just like to say that we're here ready to engage and trial and help teach just anyone, anywhere, to change an age-old practice, which whilst it's had tremendous results, traditional staking, it also has tremendous failure as well. So we're here to engage and move forward with everyone.
How about you, Callum?
Yeah, I think for me, Tim touched on it before, actually, where he said I've been around the country, and I pretty much have, except to WA, because that's where
that's overdue, Callum. I can't believe it. We'll make that happen.
But see, the reason why I've been around the country is because, I suppose, because of the heart behind the product. You know, Tree Coach was invented to make planting, you know, more precise, deliver good tree health outcomes, and we're committed to that end. And so part of that commitment means that we actually get out and get involved at site level. So if there was a council that had, you know, would purchase a bunch of Tree Coach units for install on a particular job, streetscapes, parks, doesn't matter, we actually get out there and get on site with the council teams / their contractors to teach them how to actually use the product. And I'm with them until they're proficient in installation, just to support that, back that up, and just to ensure that all the benefits that we have, you know, are carried across all the stakeholders. Because it's not just, I mean, it's not just the benefit of council inheriting a healthy tree at the end of the maintenance period. It's also physically easier to install. It means if the contractor can install trees without that risk to workers, they can install them consistently, and the contractor themselves can deliver healthy assets to their council. They don't have to worry about, you know, like about, are their teams doing it correctly? How do we hide our failures to get away with it? Or do we just set up, you know, or do we just put up with a bunch of failures, and then close to the handover period, we quickly chuck a couple of fresh trees in and then say everything's sweet. Like, no longer does that have to happen. You can plant it right the first time, every time, and we'll be there right along with you to do it.
Yeah, it's what we have done with planting teams has been really cool as well. Like you can turn up and there's always a bit of bravado. Oh, I don't need to be shown how to plant the tree, and you know we're always very conscious of the environment that we're in, because you know it's not about pointing out someone's doing something wrong. It is about coming alongside and encouraging and saying, hey, we're just a different solution. And it's really funny to see during that operation how people's attitude changes to you know, they get to the end and they're like, oh, this is cool. And so that, you know, it's always a lot of fun, but we're always very mindful of the environment that we're coming into, and just to come alongside people and show them a different way. And, you know, once they understand that, hey, it's actually easier than I thought, and it is cool. Yeah, so it's really encouraging, and that was great. Really, New Zealand was a really cool environment to see that play out with the teams over there. So yeah.
Well, that's the end of our webinar, and I'm very, very happy that I learned more even on Tree Coach. If any of the attendees wanting to know more and have questions, please do email us, send it through to info@stratagreen.com.au. As well as we have a landing page that you can get the information further on Tree Coach, stratagreen.com.au/Tree Coach, and you'll be able to book a trial on that page too. So if you want to cut all the emailing, just want to go straight to the website, stratagreen.com.au/Tree Coach, and we will be in touch. So let me just take a moment to say once again, thank you very much for Tim Buruma for being here, for sharing your heart out. It's just nothing short of amazing to see the beginning or hear the beginning of a story, of a journey that is fantastic, changing the way we see things, to unlearn and relearn a better way to plant trees. And it's such an honor to have you here once again. So thank you very much for sharing. Yeah, and as well for Callum for being here and assisting with all the questions and jumping in with all the experience in doing trial on the ground. Must be a lot of other stories there, right? That we need to.
There are a lot of other stories that maybe I don't want recorded.
No, you know, okay, we do it off the record. Once again, let me just say thank you for all the attendees tuning in for this whole 1 hour. It's a long time, but I believe that's going to be beneficial to many. And we would love to be part of that journey if you are to incorporate Tree Coach in your planting. I'm very excited for Tree Planting 2024, and I hope you are too. Until the next Start Again webinar, thank you once again for Tree Coach team.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day. See you, Jen.
See you.